The golden morning sun poured through the towering glass panels of Titan Dynamics, a symbol of wealth and modern innovation. The skyscraper gleamed like a monument of power, reflecting the city's skyline, a place where only the ambitious dared to dream. Inside, the lobby was a different world altogether. Polished marble floors, walls adorned with digital art, and the soft hum of automated assistants created an atmosphere of prestige. For most visitors, stepping into this place felt like walking into the future. Among the line of nervous candidates waiting for their turn sat Emma Fields, a young woman whose calmness contrasted with the others' anxiety. Her clothes were simple, an off-white blouse, a faded blue skirt, and worn-out shoes polished to look respectable. She clutched her folder tightly, containing her notes and diagrams, the result of sleepless nights spent preparing on her small farmhouse kitchen table. Emma had travelled for hours by bus from her rural village, Greenvale, where her father tended crops and her mother taught local children. Their farm struggled every year against droughts and poor soil. Technology, she believed, could be the solution, but no one ever listened to people like her. Still, she refused to give up. Today, she was determined to present her idea to Titan Dynamics, the leading tech firm in the country. When her name was finally called, Emma took a deep breath and entered the sleek, glass-walled conference room. Around a long oval table sat 5 executives, all in expensive suits. At the center was Richard Vance, the CEO himself, a man with sharp features, a designer watch, and an expression that oozed superiority. He barely glanced at her resume before smirking. "So," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm, "Emma Fields from Greenvale Farm?" He looked around at the panel, inviting laughter. "Tell me, do your cows need Wi-Fi?" A few executives chuckled. Emma's face flushed red, but she straightened her posture. "No, sir," she replied gently, "but if they did, maybe the farmers would lose fewer crops." Richard leaned back in his chair, amused. "So the farmer's daughter wants to lecture me on innovation?" Emma met his gaze, steady and unshaken. "No, Mr. Vance," she said softly. "I want to show you what innovation really means." The room went silent. For the first time, the arrogant CEO's smile faltered. Richard Vance leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk still playing on his lips. The other executives watched silently, sensing the tension thickening in the room. No one ever talked back to Richard, especially not an interviewee from a rural village. But there was something in Emma's voice, something unshakable, that silenced even the boldest of his staff. "All right then, Miss Fields," Richard said finally, his tone dripping with condescension. "You think you can redefine innovation? Prove it." He gestured toward the whiteboard on the far wall. "Show us something revolutionary, right now. Something that could actually make money." Emma hesitated only for a second before standing up. She walked to the board, her small heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Picking up a marker, she began to draw quick, confident strokes that formed a sketch of a simple irrigation system. "This," she began, "is a solar-powered irrigation network designed for low-income farmers." Her voice grew steadier as she explained. "Using Titan's moisture-detecting chips and low-energy processors, we can create sensors that read soil conditions in real time. The system automatically waters crops only when needed, saving up to 50% of water. The data can be transmitted through a low-bandwidth network, so even remote villages without internet can use it." The executives leaned forward, intrigued. One of them whispered, "That's actually impressive." Richard folded his arms, unimpressed. "And how much would this miracle cost?" Emma turned toward him. "Less than 2% of the price your company charges for satellite sensors. You'd open an entirely new market, farmers who've never had access to modern tools." A few members of the panel exchanged surprised looks. Her logic was undeniable. Richard scoffed lightly. "You're suggesting Titan Dynamics build tech for dirt?" Emma smiled calmly. "No, Mr. Vance, I'm suggesting you build tech for people. The ground you mock feeds every one of us. Innovation isn't just luxury, it's necessity." For a brief second, silence swallowed the room. Her words cut through Richard's arrogance like a blade. The other executives looked at him, unsure whether to laugh or applaud. He cleared his throat and muttered, "Interview over." But as Emma turned to leave, his assistant burst through the door, holding a tablet, his face pale with urgency. "Sir, you need to see this," he said breathlessly. And in that instant, Richard Vance's smirk vanished. Richard's assistant hurried to his side, whispering something that made the CEO's confident expression falter. The executives exchanged puzzled glances as the assistant handed him a tablet. Richard's eyes scanned the screen, his brow tightening with each line he read. The silence in the room became heavy. "Sir?" one of the board members asked. Richard swallowed hard. "The Ministry of Agriculture just released a new national tender," he said slowly, disbelief coloring his tone. "They're funding sustainable irrigation technologies for rural development, exactly what Miss Fields just described." A murmur spread around the table. The same executives who had laughed moments ago were now sitting straighter, their eyes flicking between Emma and the CEO. Even the usually unflappable Richard seemed at a loss for words. Emma stood quietly near the door, holding her worn leather folder. She hadn't moved since the assistant walked in, but a quiet confidence radiated from her. She didn't need to say, "I told you so." Her idea spoke for itself. Richard cleared his throat, suddenly aware of how small his earlier arrogance made him look. "Miss Fields," he said, his tone much softer than before, "would you stay a moment? I think we need to reconsider your proposal." Emma turned around slowly, her expression calm but unreadable. "I thought my idea was too simple for Titan Dynamics," she said, her voice carrying a hint of quiet strength. Richard hesitated, then forced a faint smile. "Perhaps I misjudged its potential." "No, Mr. Vance," she replied gently, "you misjudged me." The words hit him harder than he expected. For a man who prided himself on being untouchable, it was rare to feel humbled, especially by someone he had mocked. Around the room, several executives nodded subtly, clearly impressed by Emma's composure. One senior engineer leaned forward. "Sir, if we move quickly, we could submit a prototype within a month. Her design's already halfway there." Another chimed in, "And it aligns perfectly with our unused solar chip line." Richard took a deep breath and met Emma's eyes. "You have vision," he admitted. "How would you like to lead this project with Titan's full support?" Emma paused for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I'll work with you, Mr. Vance, but not for you." For the first time in years, Richard laughed sincerely. "Deal." But deep inside, he knew. She had just changed everything. Several months passed, and the world had begun to notice the change at Titan Dynamics. The company that was once known for luxury technology and sky-high prices was now making headlines for a completely different reason: innovation with purpose. At the heart of this transformation was Emma Fields, the farmer's daughter who had once been mocked in an interview room. She now stood proudly as the lead project developer for Titan's new sustainable tech division. Her design for the solar-powered irrigation network had not only won the Ministry of Agriculture's contract, but had also revolutionized farming in hundreds of villages. In a sleek, modern press conference hall, cameras flashed as reporters gathered around the stage. Behind the podium stood Richard Vance, no longer wearing his arrogance like armor. His tone was warm, his demeanor humble, a man transformed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, smiling genuinely, "Titan Dynamics is proud to announce the success of our newest initiative, the Green Link project. We've combined technology and compassion to help farmers across the nation." Applause filled the room. Beside him stood Emma, dressed professionally but simply, her presence commanding respect. When Richard gestured for her to speak, she stepped forward, her calm voice echoing through the hall. "When we started this project," she said, "many believed that technology only belonged to the rich. But today, it belongs to everyone, to every farmer, every worker, every dreamer who wants a better life. The audience erupted in applause again. Somewhere, in a small farmhouse far from the city, her father watched the live broadcast with tears in his eyes. The same girl who once fixed broken sprinklers in their dusty fields was now changing the lives of thousands. After the conference, Richard turned to Emma privately. "You know," he said with a half-smile, "you didn't just build a product, you rebuilt this company." Emma smiled back. "Maybe," she said softly, "but you're the one who chose to listen." Richard nodded. "I had to. You reminded me what real innovation means." Emma looked out the window at the bustling city below. "Technology isn't about power, Mr. Vance. It's about people." And as the cameras flashed one last time, the arrogant CEO who once mocked a farmer's daughter stood beside her, not as her superior, but as her equal, forever changed by her courage and kindness.